The supermarket was crowded that day with people rushing through the aisles, but for a young mother with tired eyes holding her newborn against her chest and guiding her little daughter by the hand, the world felt heavier than usual. She had only a few items in her cart, mostly essentials: bread, rice, some baby formula, and a pack of diapers, but she knew she could not afford them. All her hands trembled as she checked the prices again and again, her heart sinking with every number that flashed. In front of her, she looked down at her little girl, who stared longingly at the can of baby milk on the counter, then back at the tiny baby in her arms, who whimpered softly as though hungry. The mother's face reflected defeat as she slowly reached for the baby milk can and pushed it aside, whispering under her breath that they would manage somehow. Her daughter's small hand twitched as if wanting to pull it back, but she stayed quiet, understanding the silent pain of her mother, though she was far too young to understand why life felt so unfair. Her mother swallowed the lump in her throat, picked up the remaining items, and moved forward with the transaction. Behind them stood a man in a tailored suit, his sharp features softened as he observed the scene. He had come to the store after a long day at work, trying to escape his endless meetings and suffocating wealth. For a moment, he simply watched the small family, noting the worry lines on the mother's face and the resignation. In her every movement, she reminded him of someone he once knew years ago, when he was just another boy from a struggling home, his father gone, his mother fighting every day to provide. The cashier scanned the few items, and the total came up. The mother hesitated, pulled out a worn wallet, counted a few bills, and then removed a packet of rice too, leaving only the barest minimum. The cashier nodded, expressionless, as though used to this kind of scene. The little girl pressed her lips together, tightly holding back tears. The baby whimpered again and nestled into his mother's chest. The man in the suit felt something stir inside him. It was not pity. It was recognition. He knew this feeling. He knew what it was like to be told no, to be hungry, to see the worry in a mother's eyes as she wondered how she would feed her children. He had once sworn, if he ever became rich, he would never let another child feel that kind of emptiness. Yet over the years, he had been consumed by his empire, the meetings, the contracts, the profits, until humanity had become a distant memory. But today, this small family was forcing him to remember. As the mother prepared to leave, clutching her bag, the man stepped forward quietly and gestured to the cashier, ring up the formula, the diapers, and everything else she left behind. The cashier looked at him surprised, but he simply gave a nod. The mother turned back, confused, her tired eyes locking with his for the first time. "Sir, please, you don't have to," she whispered, almost ashamed. But he only smiled gently. "I insist, please let me do this." Her lips trembled. She wanted to argue, but the words stuck in her throat. The little girl looked up at him with wide eyes, unable to believe a stranger would care. He handed his card to the cashier without hesitation and paid for everything, including the items she had reluctantly abandoned. The cashier bagged them up and placed them gently in her cart. The mother stood frozen, unsure whether to thank him or cry. But before she could speak, he leaned down slightly to meet the little girl's eyes and said softly, "Always take care of your mom. She is stronger than she knows, but she needs you too." The little girl nodded solemnly, gripping her mother's dress tighter. He then turned his gaze to the mother. "Your children deserve the world, and you deserve peace, even if just for today. Please don't feel like you owe me anything. You already reminded me of something important." He stepped back, giving her space. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks. She clutched the bag with the baby milk tighter than anything she had ever held and whispered, "Thank you," though the words felt too small for the weight of what he had done. Her baby stirred. Lightly, as if sensing relief, the man gave a slight nod, then began to walk away. But as he left, something tugged at him. He stopped at the entrance and turned back. She was still standing there, overwhelmed, her daughter at her side, their cart full. For the first time in a long while, he knew walking away would mean he had done a small kindness, but perhaps he could do more. He approached her again. "May I walk you to your car?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, then nodded together. They walked through The parking lot. The air cool around them, he noticed the car was old, dented in places, clearly a struggle to keep running. The mother placed the groceries inside carefully and buckled her children in. The man stood watching silently. Then finally asked, "What is your name, Emily?" She said softly. He introduced himself but kept his voice humble, not mentioning who he really was or the empire he owned. As they spoke, he learned she had been widowed recently, her husband gone in an accident, leaving her with debt and 2 young children to raise on her own. She worked part-time, but the bills always piled higher than her paychecks. She admitted she had come to the store that day with just enough for bread and rice, but her daughter had begged for the formula for the baby and she could not say no. Something inside him broke hearing her story. He pulled out a card and pressed it into her hand. "This is not charity," he said firmly. "This is a chance. I want you to call this number tomorrow and speak to my assistant. I run several businesses. We are always looking for reliable, hardworking people. I think you would be perfect." Emily froze, her hand shaking. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he replied with a soft smile. "And when you are ready, you can tell me later. Thank you for reminding me what really matters." She clutched the card to her chest as if it were a lifeline. Her daughter peeked curiously from the car seat, her eyes sparkling with a new kind of hope. Emily managed to smile through her tears and whispered, "I will thank you." He gave a final nod, then stepped away as she drove off into the night. He stood in the parking lot watching the taillights fade, remembering the promise he had made long ago never to forget where he came from. The next day, Emily called the number. Her voice trembling, the assistant was expecting her, and soon she was sitting in an office unlike anything she had ever seen. The man greeted her warmly, not as a millionaire, not as a businessman, but as a human being who had once been where she was. He offered her a position, stable pay, flexible hours, and benefits that would ensure her children never went without again. Emily's eyes filled with tears. She accepted not just the job, but the chance to rebuild her life months later. She stood taller, her children healthier and happier, her daughter now full of laughter. Her baby thriving. The man visited from time to time, always humble, never treating her as anything less than equal. What began as a moment in a grocery store had turned into something larger than any of them could have imagined. A reminder that sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change the course of an entire life, and that true wealth is not measured by what you have, but by what you give. And every time Emily placed a can of baby milk into her cart, she smiled, remembering that day when a stranger saw her struggle and chose to follow her, not to judge, but to lift her back up, to remind her that even in the darkest times, hope can appear in the most unexpected places.